I really love shopping at Kirkland's, especially when it comes to seasonal decor. However, if I were to add up everything that I wanted to take home for fall this year, my bank account would not be happy with me. So today I am going to share with you 10 different DIYs that resemble items you can find right now at Kirkland's stores and online, but I'm going to show you how to dupe them for much cheaper so you can get that high-end look for a lot less. So stay tuned. This is Whiskey and Whit. My name's Whitney, and if you're new here on this channel, I love to share DIY and budget home decor, as well as Cricut projects and wood builds. So if you love all things DIY, be sure to hit subscribe down below so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video and a ton more fall content I have coming your way. I started doing these Kirkland's dupe videos last fall in 2020, and you guys liked it so much I did it for Christmas as well as spring and Easter, and I love it because I get to go on the Kirkland's website, browse for a ton of stuff, and challenge myself to dupe it for much less. And spoiler alert, they are all much, much less.
So I have been loving incorporating darker tones into my fall decor, and I loved this sign, but not for 20 bucks. So I thought I could take some of this floral wire from Dollar Tree and recreate it. So I started by printing out two sides, a picture of the actual item from Kirkland's so I could use it as a guide. And then I took my floral wire, which you can easily cut with scissors as you're seeing here, and I shaped out all of the letters in thankful. If you want a different word, you could easily do that as well, or Kirkland's has one that says grateful in the same motif, so you could do that as well. But I was just focusing on creating the letters as closely as I could with as little extra pieces as I could. So for the F, instead of doing two lines out, I made the top curve, so I only had to glue on one piece, and you'll see why in a minute. So then I took my small detailed glue gun and glued together the pieces that couldn't be created in one bend of the wire. And I wasn't super worried about being able to see the glue because I'm going to spray paint these in a second, so I just wanted to make sure that they were well adhered to each other. I also used Gorilla brand glue sticks because those bond to metal. Then I took all my letters outside, and to make sure they didn't blow away, I just put them in a box, and I used some flat black spray paint to coat them on both sides. So I did one side, let it dry, and then flip it over and do the other side. And what it did is made the little areas where I glued them together just look like they were soldered, which was awesome. While those were drying, I grabbed a pack of these 5-gallon stir sticks I got for 97 cents at Walmart, and I cut off the kind of little nub at the end, the handle if you will, and then I sanded the end and stained it with some briar smoke stain to create my base. After my letters were created, I did have to trim it down just a hair so that it fit the letters. It was a little too long, but that was easy to do with my miter box. And then I used my same glue stick to glue out all the letters. I made sure to start in the center and go outward so everything was evenly spaced. My last step was just to take a little detail brush and put a little bit of chalk paint on the glue that was on the wood so that it looked like it was then soldered onto the wood as well. I really like this. It was easy to put together, and I think I'm going to use this trick for another season. This would be great for Christmas as well. You could do these for baby showers or somebody's last name. There are a lot of different options. So as a reminder, here is the Kirkland's version, and here is mine, about 20 bucks versus about $3, incorporating all of the costs approximated for paint and things, and I absolutely love it. This next inspiration was the Cornerstone for this video. I absolutely loved the look of the canvas, but it was almost $50, and so I thought I could easily make this myself. So I grabbed some more of those 5-gallon paint sticks. You can get them at the hardware store, but I just got them from Walmart. I actually added them onto my grocery purchase, so I didn't even have to go in. We just do grocery pickup. And I started by doing the same thing, just chopping off that little kind of nub essentially at the end, and then I used my first piece as a template so that all 4 of my pieces were going to be the same length. Once those were all cut, I sanded down the rough edges, and then I grabbed my favorite Briar Smoke by Varathane. It is easily becoming my second #1 favorite next to Dark Walnut. It's got a warmer tone than Dark Walnut, and it's got a little bit of gray in it, which I really like. So once those were dry, I grabbed a piece of drop cloth, and this is the same drop cloth you guys have been seeing me use in a ton of videos. So really, if you buy it, you can make a ton of projects with it, and it's only 10 bucks at Walmart. I cut down a piece that was approximately about 12 inches wide by 17 inches long, and I had to fold it over a couple times to get my cut straight because sometimes I cut like a kindergartner. No offense to kindergartners, they probably cut better than me. Then I used my Cricut and a file I designed myself to recreate that look of the fall essentials. I also added a couple items that weren't on there that I liked myself. That's another great thing about duping high-end looks, is that you can make them your own. I preheated my Easy Press to 320 for 30 seconds, but if you don't have an Easy Press, you can easily use your iron on heat transfer vinyl. If you're new to Cricut, the two main types of vinyl are ones that you can attach with heat, which is what I'm doing here, or adhesive vinyl. If you are new, like I said, I've got a whole video breaking that down for you, so I will link that up above so you can check that out. Once everything was cool, I peeled off my carrier sheet, and then it was time to just add some hot glue and glue down my top and bottom wood pieces. So I just used a generous amount of hot glue, and then at the top, I just inserted my strings. I added 2 dabs of glue and then some more glue on top. This holds really well, especially with the Gorilla brand glue sticks. I get them at Walmart and I really like them. And then I finished that off with sandwiching my other piece of wood. After getting rid of any little wispies, my fall essentials hanger was done. I absolutely love this. I love when I'm able to find fonts that are similar or almost exact to what I am trying to dupe. This looks so nice hanging on my blanket ladder in our front room. And as a reminder, these are basically the same size. So this is a straight dupe. Theirs was $45 and mine was $10. You could do it for about $18 if you had to buy everything. But like I said, you would have a ton of drop cloth left over. And if you are a regular crafter, you probably have some black heat transfer vinyl just sitting in your stash anyway. This was another piece I fell in love with and thought I could easily make that so much cheaper. They are these black chalk paint pumpkins that they're selling for $10. So I had this pumpkin that I tried to do like 3 different projects with. It was originally this like wood looking pumpkin from Dollar Tree. And so I decided to give it new life. I added some metallic spray paint just to the top little stem to create that look that the Kirklands one had. And then when that was dry, I just went through with some Waverly black chalk paint. I did 2 coats on the top, and that chalk paint is going to give you a really nice matte finish looking just like the inspiration. This project is super easy. You could do it for $1. You could also hand paint the top in a metallic gold acrylic paint that you could get for like 50 cents. So it is a really easy thing to do. I also did it on this orange pumpkin. These were ones that I had from years ago from Dollar Tree that I wanted to give some new life. So I really like them to bring them back on trend. Super easy. You could also do pumpkins you could find at any other store, Walmart, etc. But there's again $10. Mine, if you include the extra paint and such, it was about $2, which is an 80% saving. For this next round of projects, I really liked the two-tone frame look in this Full of Thanks, as well as this fall is my favorite, but I knew I could recreate that with something I already had. So I had these 2 frames that I had thrifted previously, but I didn't know what to do with, and this was the perfect project. I just popped out the glass and the backing and used some painter's tape to tape off a semi-uneven line, and I already had a white frame, but if you don't have a white frame, you could easily paint the whole thing white and then do the black line. I used my tape again to fix a little mess up that I had where the line wasn't straight. And then I used that same piece of tape once the other one was dry to do some white on my wood frame. Super easy. Then I created these 2 files. They are free printables over on my blog, and I just jazzed up the plain wording that was in the inspiration piece. This is more my style with the watercolor imagery and more orange in there, and so I just printed those as 8x10s just on regular paper on a regular printer, nothing crazy fancy, but I really like the 2-tone colors. It pulls in the different aspects of my decor as well as the buffalo check for the black and white, and I really like the kind of orangey wood for this one. Normally I am not a huge fan of that, but I do really like it, especially for fall, because it does go along with the orange leaves and the orange pumpkins as well as the orange word fall. You can grab any type of frame that you want. You can also do this with Dollar Tree frames. I just liked the real wood frames that I got from the thrift store. And with these, you could do whatever color that you want. And you could even pop in one of my other 20 free printables. I will link all the details down below on how you can download those. So here's our comparison. The Full of Thanks at the top was $19.99. The smaller one was an 8x10, which was $14.99. Mine, I put a little extra razzmatazz on it to match my decor, and they were $3 each with my thrifted frames. I think that's a win. I am loving seeing lanterns in a new light. So this one I saw on the Kirkland's website was $80. It's actually 26 inches high and the base is 10 by 10. I didn't need something that big or that expensive, so I decided to dupe the look in a smaller version. So I had one of these Dollar Tree boxes on hand. I bought them before and didn't have something in mind for this one. So this is the medium size box that they sold. I believe it's a 6 by 6. And then I also had some of these square dowel rods. They are the 5/8 of an inch by 3 feet. I got them at Home Depot for $3 a piece and I used just under 2 of them. My first step was to measure out 4 pieces at 12 inches. So I got 3 out of the first piece because it was 36 inches and then an additional 1 out of my second piece. I just used my miter box to cut it down. It was a pretty quick and simple process and I was able to just do it here on my kitchen counter. Then I took the remaining piece and cut 4 pieces at 3.5 inches. That was what I ended up measuring. If you're using a different box, you're going to want to measure the width of your side to make sure that that measurement will allow you to create the box that we will create in a minute. Once all my pieces were cut, I just sanded the ends really quick to make sure that there weren't any rough edges, and then I started to assemble my lantern. I'm using Gorilla Wood Glue here. I get it at Walmart. It is really cheap. It's a couple bucks for a container, and especially for things like this where you're not hanging the lantern, it's just sitting there. It's a really great alternative to not have to nail or screw or anything. So I just put some wood glue on the end of my 3.5 inch piece, and then I used my DeWalt clamp to hold it in place. Now to make sure the bottom didn't bow together, I just used one of my extra 3.5 inch pieces, just slid it in there as essentially a spacer while the top glue was drying. If you do have some glue squirt out, don't worry, just act quickly and take a wet paper towel and just wipe it off. If you leave it there, you won't be able to stain it as well and it'll look kind of funky. Then I repeated those same steps with my second side to create the 2 sides of the box of my lantern. Then I popped out those spacers, added some wood glue, and created a square to match the bottom of my lantern base. Took me a couple tries to get it right, but then once I did, I kind of overlapped my clamps. You just want to make sure that they are under tension with the wood glue. If you don't have wood glue, you could use nails and a nail gun, or you could even use screws if you really need to. Just keep in mind that if you do use screws, you're going to see them on the outside. I like the wood glue approach because you wouldn't see anything, and that is what you want it to look like when you're done. My last 2 steps was to remove the front hardware because I wanted to spray paint that a different color and to hot glue my top to the base box of my lantern. I'm using Gorilla Glue hot glue and it works for wood as well. Then I went outside and gave my lantern a full stain in Dark Walnut by Minwax, as well as taking some flat black spray paint and spray painting the front piece of hardware and the 2 screws that attached it. When it was all dry, I reattached the hardware to my stained piece, and then it was time to decorate it and make it look like fall. I decided to just lay my pieces in there so that I could use it for multiple seasons and I could switch out the greenery or the florals. These muted florals are from Dollar Tree. They're absolutely gorgeous. These are my favorite that they have this fall. I've used them in different projects, and I just cut off the pieces with my miter shears because I like to work with them as individual pieces versus the one big pick, and I tucked them in around my candle that I had on hand. You could use an LED candle if you want it to glow. You could use whatever florals that you want, but this is a really, really pretty dupe that was so cheap compared to that $80 one. Now keep in mind, the bottom, like I said, is 6 by 6 versus 10 by 10, and my height is about 15 inches total with the 12-inch pieces in the box at the bottom, and the inspiration piece was 26 inches tall. So we're not looking at apples directly, but with the look, they look very similar, and you can get it for less. So as a reminder, theirs was retailing for $79.99, and mine I put together for about 10 bucks, and most of the supplies were Dollar Tree. I have such a love for throw pillows, and I really like making my own because I can make them for super cheap like this one. I can make it way less than 35 bucks, and I also wanted to try to make one with just pumpkins versus wording on it, so here are my 2 inspirations. I recently got this orange check fabric from Hobby Lobby. I used it in my Hobby Lobby video, but I saved some of this because I knew I wanted to dupe some Kirkland's pillows. So to create my pillow, I did 2 squares, 18 inches by 18 inches, and I went around the outside and glued the pieces together, leaving a small hole on one of the sides so that I could stuff my pillow. Once that was cool, I flipped it inside out to use the hot glue lines as faux seams. Then I cut a square just smaller than my pillow out of some burlap from that same drop cloth we used earlier. And once it was the size I wanted, I also went through and added just a little bit of a rustic feel to it. So I pulled off some of the little pieces, kind of like you can do for burlap or here on a canvas drop cloth, and just peel everything back to give a frayed edge. Then I cut out 2 pumpkin decals as well as the farmer's market decal you'll see in a minute. I designed all of those, so those are free downloads over on my blog. I positioned it on the piece of drop cloth that I cut up, and then I used my heat press at 320 for 30 seconds. I had to do the 4 corners of the item, and then I was ready to put it on my pillow. I followed the same process for my buffalo check pillow, creating the actual pillow, as well as cutting out the canvas drop cloth. And then, like I said, I created this decal. I made a couple tweaks to it to make it look a little bit more like how I wanted, but then I pressed it onto my pillow, glued it onto the front of my pillow, and then it was ready to be stuffed. To glue the drop cloth piece on, I peeled up one side once I had it where I wanted it, put a little bit of glue, and then flipped up the other side. That will allow you to make sure it stays where you want it instead of trying to get it in the perfect location a second time. So for this project, I used some polyfill that I got at Walmart, as well as some stuffing from some old pillows that I wasn't using anymore, which was nice. I could get that out of my stash. And then once everything's stuffed on your pillows, just take some hot glue and hook the rest of that opening that you used to stuff it. I really like the idea of using the drop cloth on the front of a pillow. You get both a pattern as well as the text on there. The canvas really acts as an opaque backing, essentially, to what you're trying to put on there, because even if I was to use like an orange heat transfer vinyl, it definitely wouldn't show up on that buffalo check, so I like that I'm able to get both. And here is what that pumpkin one looked like. And another thing too is you can make pillows just like that even if you don't have a Cricut or don't want wording on them. I used these burnt orange ones to act as a stager essentially with these pillows, and that fabric is also from Hobby Lobby and the pillow is made the exact same way. So a few different options depending on what you're looking for. Nonetheless, their pillows retail for $35, and even everything included, the polyfill, the stuffing, the amount of vinyl I used for this pillow, we're looking at about $10 for the pillow. So you can make 3.5 essentially pillows for the price of the Kirklands one, which you cannot beat. Each year Kirkland's has a ton of seasonal items with monograms, and this year is no different. This sign looked like a pretty easy dupe, and I will show you how to do it even if you don't have a Cricut. So the first thing I did is grabbed this Dollar Tree sign, and I took off the little metal leaf to save it for later, as well as the hanger, and then I peeled off some of the text as best I could so the back wasn't as busy. Then to get that faux wood look, I took some antique wax from Waverly and I painted it all over my pumpkin. Then to make it look a little bit more like stain versus paint, I just took a paper towel and wiped off the excess right after I applied it. It will stay on there, but with the rubbing and such, you will get a little bit more graining from the chipboard underneath, and that will make it look a little bit more rustic and give it a little bit more character versus just painting with a brown paint. Then I just grabbed some painter's tape and taped off about halfway to the middle of my pumpkin, and then I painted the bottom with some white chalk paint to get the two-toned look. I love peeling off painter's tape. It's so satisfying. Then to create my C, instead of worrying about sticking a decal down and peeling off any of that paint that I just did, I just used some graphite paper. This is tracing paper I have from Arteza. I'll link it down below. And then I just cut out a C in a font that I wanted and went through with a detailed brush and painted it in. I'm not a super great painter, but if you use stuff simple like this and you can easily trace it and then use a little paintbrush to paint it in, it's easy to do, and then you don't have to worry about peeling anything up. To finish off the look, I just did a little bit of hunter green paint with some white paint to add to my leaf, because in the inspiration the leaf was a little more muted and I liked that look. Then I added my little hanger back onto my sign as well as my leaf. And then this piece, I decided to add just a little bit of that fabric from the pillows we just did. I had it left over as scrap, and I liked the pop of orange to make it match my decor. This is great for the center of a wreath or for hanging on your wall, and it's really easy to do. And if you don't have any tracing paper, you can also take a pencil, scribble along the back of the C, for example, here, and then trace it, and that pencil lead will then transfer to your sign for you to trace as well. So there's a lot of different options. I hear you guys when you say that some of you don't have Cricuts. I totally understand. So I like to give you options for both Cricut as well as if you don't have one. So here's the breakdown. Their sign is a little bit larger than mine, but it is retailing for 30 bucks. This pumpkin is a little less wide, but it was for $2 and it fits exactly in the area where I want it. So I will chalk that up as a win. It's an easy Dollar Tree dupe that anyone can do. So for this project, it's kind of funny because I found a sign that I loved, and then when I went back to find the page on the website, it wasn't there. So we're going to use this kind of as an example, but this is the sign. I actually saved the picture of what I was going for. So I took a piece of scrap wood that I had in my garage. This is about 20 inches wide, and I painted it with some black chalk paint. After the 2 coats of paint dried, I printed out Hello Fall on the printer in the size that I wanted. I just measured my wood and then sized it in Google Docs. It's pretty easy to do. And then you've got a really easy thing to trace. I went through with the same graphite paper and traced the words on there so that I could paint them on. Here's what the tracing looks like. If you look really closely, you can see it faintly, and it's just enough to be able to follow through with a little paintbrush and paint everything in. So this font I'm using is called Market Saturday. So if you are someone with a Cricut, I will link that down below. It's been one of my favorite fonts to use lately. You've seen it all over my projects and I really like it. It's a free download. But then also you have the font as well if you don't have a Cricut and want to do this process like I'm doing. It took me about 25-30 minutes to paint everything, but honestly it was kind of zen and I really liked doing it. And then after it was all dry, I just went through with a little bit more black to touch up any areas where I had any flubs. While that was all drying, I went outside and created a frame for my sign. Now I have a full video on how I create wood signs, how to create the frame, how to measure, how to find the right wood in the store, just all the things. So if you want to learn all my sign secrets, head over to that video. I will link it up above as well as down below. That will explain the entire process here in case you want to learn how to frame out your signs. I also show how you can do it with a miter box. You don't need the big tools, so be sure to check that out. But here I'm using a 1x2 furring strip. I went through and sanded it all down just with my orbital sander. Sanded wood takes stain so much better. And then I stained all of the pieces on all of the sides with dark walnut. It's a Minwax stain. And then I also took one of these Dollar Tree Create Your Own Ornament leaves. I had one left over from last year. I filled the hole with a little bit of wood filler and then I stained it with the same color to add a little extra zhuzh to the sign. I glued my little stained leaf right in the center there just to spice it up a little bit. And then I used my nail gun to hook on all of the pieces of border. Again, all of that process is outlined in the wood sign video, so you can figure out how to do that for any season, not just fall. But here is how you can create a custom sign with fun script text that's super trendy with or without a Cricut. So you could easily cut out the decal and apply it if you have the machine. But if you don't, like I said, want to give you another option on how you could dupe some Kirklands items. So the mysterious sign that I can no longer find on their website was $29.99. It was a little bit longer in width, but not as tall as my sign. So I'm going to say it's a similar size. With all of the items included in there, I made mine for about $12 without a vinyl cutter, which is also exciting because more people can dupe that look. I really love the look of this framed canvas art print, but I did not like the $50 price tag, so I thought I could easily dupe it with Dollar Tree items. I started with an 8x10 Dollar Tree canvas and removed the outside canvas by popping out the staples on the back with a flathead screwdriver and then just using some pliers to pull out all of the staples to remove that canvas. Then I gave it a quick sand because the inside of the Dollar Tree frames are not the best made. They will be a little rough, so you're going to want to get rid of any little pieces of wood. And then I recently saw Jennifer do this over at Little Bit of Calm and Crazy, and I wanted to try it. She took some paint with some water and created a faux stain, which I thought was genius. And so I wanted the black frame, but I wanted it to look still like wood instead of just a black painted frame. So this worked out perfect for it. So thank you, Jennifer. Then I traced my frame on a scrap piece of foam board, also from Dollar Tree. And then this is another free printable over on my blog that you can cut out. I cut it out to a 9x7 instead of an 8x10 to allot for the frame. And then I traced it and cut it out. Once it was cut out, I just put some glue stick on the back, glued it to the foam core, and then used some hot glue on the back of my wood canvas frame to hook it to my little foam board faux sign there. And that's it. You could add something to hang it with if you want to, but I just plan on setting it up in a little vignette. I love how it looks with the lantern that I also made in this video. I also love that it's customizable, so you could create your own with different things that you want it to say. I ended up changing and adding apple cider to mine just because I do like that in the fall. I'm more of an apple cider than a pumpkin spice type of girl. And this is super easy for literally like $2. So theirs, again, was a little bit bigger at 11x14. Mine is an 8x10, but the text and the vibe and everything is so similar, and for $2, I can easily deal with the fact that it is smaller. And our last project today are going to be these really fun fabric pumpkins. I recently shared this in a Hobby Lobby video, but I thought it was worth sharing again just because fabric pumpkins are hugely popular and you can make them for so much cheaper. So I grabbed some fabric at Hobby Lobby, and you need something that is circular so you can trace it. So for a big one, I used our round pizza pan and traced it on a piece of this fabric. Then once that was done, I took a needle and thread, but I would suggest using some yarn because once I did this, it broke and I had to redo it with yarn anyway. But you're going to go around the outside of your circle, weaving a needle and thread in and out. I like to use a dowel needle because it is thicker and it's easier for me to maneuver. And you're basically creating what looks like a shower cap, but you're going to want that so that you can stuff it like I did here. Just added some polyfill to the center, and then take your two ends of your yarn and tie them. So you scrunch it up at the top, and that's how you get the start of your fabric pumpkin. I made sure to tie it 3 or 4 times just to make sure it wasn't going to untie on me, and then I gave it a little massage to let everything kind of shake out. After I did that, to create the grooves of the pumpkin, I put some yarn back on my needle and I pushed it through the center of my pumpkin and looped it up around the side and went back through the center of my pumpkin. When you pull it tight, you're not really going to see that white yarn on the outside, but it is going to start to create those grooves or dimples of a pumpkin and make it look more like a pumpkin essentially versus a just blob. Once everything is around your pumpkin, I did about 5. I tied the bottom. And then it was time to add embellishments. So I just used my miter shears and cut some little twigs from my yard, but you could also grab things like wine corks, cinnamon sticks, dowel rods from Dollar Tree, just anything that would look like a pumpkin stem. Like, you don't have to use something from your yard. I've heard you before when some of you guys were like, I live in an apartment, I don't have a yard. That's totally fine. If you've got wine, if you've got dowel rods, you could do a ton of different things. I used some hot glue and just applied it on the inside of the pumpkin. This one here also has some wired jute cord, and then this is just some burlap I had on hand to create a little bit of a leaf shape to then glue on to make it look like a pumpkin. This is where you can really be creative and unique and add as much or as little as you want. For how much they are selling those similar pumpkins, you could easily make them yourself. The other perk here is you can make a variety of different sizes. The little ones were created with things like smaller bowls or smaller cups, and you can make a ton. I estimated that mine were about $2 each, and the similar ones are selling at Kirkland's for $14.99. You can get a yard of fabric, a thing of polyfill, and go to town and make a ton of them. So I wanted to make sure I shared this again so that if you were looking for fabric pumpkins, I could save you a little bit of money and you can customize it to your look.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to let me know down in the comments your favorite project. I really do use that feedback to inform my future videos. Also, if you're new here, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video. And I will link some of my favorite recent fall videos here for you as well in case you missed them. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!